Wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Definitely not his, the barn burner that Leif Cassidy and Tiger Ellie Singh was, but, we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Hager kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Zelina Vega on a pole match for that to be.
It is in the mail, my good sir. Oh, it wasn't Paul.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely, and
And then you can listen to us too. We're off to a rough start.
This is Wrestling with wrestling's past and present. I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And today we're doing something we have never done before. We're going to break down a Raw from 2013. It was March 4th, 2013. And it was an old school Raw.
Easy for you to say.
I know.
You were getting excited for the old school part. This wasn't a terrible show. It was somewhat hard to watch because it was just long. It was entertaining, but it was just a long. And it's funny because it's only a little over 2 hours, so it doesn't you look at it on paper and you're like, oh, it's not that long, but it was really long. It just felt long.
Yeah, like we were talking about off air, with Raw being 3 hours now, it's almost a chore to get through Raws. And this one, not for lack of content, it's just the way they stretch it out, the way they place segments, it just makes it feel so long. Roland jokes about falling asleep. I totally fell asleep at one point watching this, not 'cause it's a bad quality show, but when we try to fit in watching these to, essentially being 9-10 o'clock at night for myself, it's like, all right, I can make note, I'm out.
Yeah, unless it's like a banger, like NXT, I had no problem watching because that was a really good show. That had a lot of stuff on, throughout the show. This wasn't bad. Once I got to like the Mark Henry segment the first time, I just fell asleep. Same thing. I was like 40-ish minutes in, and I was just like, okay, down I went. But yeah, no, it wasn't any reasoning behind the talent being bad or the matches being bad. It's just like you said. Usually we're watching this later on in the night for some of us, or after we've done something else during the day, and we just we're trying to fit it in. Some shows watch easier than, yeah, that's true. Some shows watch easier than others, I guess is the best way to put it.
So we start off with the return of The Undertaker. He just kind of walks his way down the entrance ramp. No promo or anything. He just kind of shows up.
Imagine getting dressed up to just go like this. Put his arms up in front of the Titantron. And before we get too far into it, I love the old school set. I love the old school entrance ramp. I love the even something as simple as the old school table, just a table with a sheet on it. It was a cool feel to the show. You can't kick the show off. Sorry, Mongo. You can't kick the show off any better than with The Undertaker making his return.
No, I agree. It's always funny how a wrestling crowd pops for literally just a gong. And it's funny. It's like in the rock world, everyone pops for Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. As soon as you hear that entrance riff, everyone gets excited. When you hear the Undertaker gong, you get excited because you know who that is. And like Roland said, the set is amazing. My favorite thing is the ring. I absolutely love the red, white, and blue ropes and the like light blue apron. It reminds me of those old Mattel rings that I used to have. Like I had that plastic blue ring that was a massive thing, and I love seeing it. And so the aesthetics were amazing. The visuals, the set designers, give them all the credit in the world. The big Raw letters, everything about it was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I like the old school intro too to the Raw.
Yep,
that was neat. And then you have Mean Gene's voice in there, and
rest in peace.
Yep.
I know it's funny to think like this is 2013, so this is what 8 years ago, and there's a lot of people that have passed away.
Yeah,
just in this show alone.
So CM Punk comes out next. He's gonna challenge The Undertaker to WrestleMania 29. He had recently lost his title to The Rock after like 464 days, I think.
Bullshit. Sorry, had something in my throat there.
I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you on that, Roland.
It's like The Fiend losing to Goldberg.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. Stupid. But anyhow.
But he'll be interrupted by Randy Orton, Sheamus, and The Big Show. They're all going to want to challenge The Undertaker. Vicky Guerrero comes out. and says this is going to be a fatal 4-way match later on in the night with the winner facing The Undertaker.
Yeah, we all know, if anybody's a fan, we know that this, no matter what, we already know who wins this because we know that this is the WrestleMania leading into the WrestleMania where Punk does challenge The Undertaker streak. And this, I think, is really after he lost to The Rock. I think that's when his downward spiral kind of began. So they were trying to give him stuff that entertained him, or to try to, that made him want to be there, because I think they felt the same thing, that he just, after the title loss to The Rock, he didn't agree with it. And, but like a pro, he put him over and did what he had to do. And I think this, right after he lost the title, this is kind of leading up to that like 1 year or so, like tailspin where he was finally just like, screw this, I'm out of here. But, coming in as a fan in 2021, that it was Punk and Undertaker. And not to fast forward too far, but that was actually a decently set up match. Punk was a chicken shit heel in the match. So I don't want to dissect it too much, but I mean, it was actually a pretty good way to close the show. But I'm a Punk mark, so it was cool to see Punk still having some fire, but not quite when he had the long title reign.
No, it's crazy that in 2008, they strapped the rocket ship to the back and he went nuclear. And the 2011, 2012 summers of Punk were just some of the best in wrestling and the best in WWE that they've ever done. And like you said, he loses the title to The Rock like a pro. And it's nothing against The Rock. It's just they wanted, and again, no spoilers, but it's going to happen. They wanted Cena to beat The Rock for the title because they wanted to kind of make Cena have The Rock's match mean something by giving him the strap. So it kind of sucks that Punk kind of got thrown in the middle of this. You're going to end this amazing reign basically so you can give the title to Cena. Well, why not have him drop it to Cena? Like rekindle that feud. It didn't make sense. So I agree. I think that this was kind of their last shot to put a rocket ship on him, shot the moon. And I think if he actually had beaten The Undertaker, he probably would have stayed. He probably wouldn't have walked out after the Royal Rumble 2014 because his career would have just skyrocketed. The wrong person beat the streak, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is literally a product of 50-50 booking, like a casualty of 50-50 booking, because like you said, Cena and Rock faced each other at WrestleMania the year before. They had to up the ante.
Well, I even read somewhere where Punk did an interview about that match with The Undertaker, and he said, here I am wrestling, and I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After I'm telling you right now, after he was told he had to lose to The Rock, it put him. He didn't want anything to do with it because Rock was a part-timer at best. I mean, yeah, he's a big name, but I mean, he's not. That's the thing. I mean, Punk was wrestling hurt more often than not, and and putting his ass out there, and then somebody like Dwayne comes in and just steals his thunder, takes the belt, and I get that. Again, I get that it's wrestling and storylines and whatnot, but you have to feel somewhat slighted if they're like, well, we're gonna put this guy's gonna appear like 10 times this year, we're gonna put the belt on him. It's like, cool.
And they still do it, and that's the problem with WWE is they don't learn from their mistakes. So this is 8 years ago. That's why we're doing this show, because it's 8 years ago this week, and it's the same problems. Part-timer comes in, gets the strap, never defends it, takes it from a champion who should have it, aka the Fiend, aka anyone who's there, and bust their ass. And again, it has nothing to do with name recognition. But if they have the name recognition, they don't need the strap.
Right. But like you said, they faced off the year before at Mania, Rock and Cena, so they had to up the ante somehow, and that's what they decided to do, unfortunately.
So our first match of the evening is Cesaro, or Antonio Cesaro.
Back when he still had 2 names.
Yes, he's the U.S. Champion here, and he's going to take on Ryback. Ryback gets the win with the shell shock. Just a typical Ryback match.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it just proves to you that what they think of Cesaro. He's the United States champion, and he's jobbing essentially to Ryback. I mean, he got some of his stuff in, so it wasn't like full blown jobbing, but it's about as close to jobbing as you can get.
Can we just talk about how the King is mailing in commentary so far? Like, this was the most mailed in commentary I think I've seen. I mean, he uses that unstoppable force and movable object line more than any person I know. And I feel like he dropped it in this match. And it's like, it's Ryback. I don't know. Like, I was almost insulted. I'm like,
I think it was funny that somebody on Twitter said they look like ketchup and mustard bottles.
Yes.
Because he had his red, his red, the King had his red crown and jacket on, and Cole had that god awful mustard yellow blazer.
Maybe they got mixed up in the laundry, and that's where Mark Henry gets his Hall of Fame suit, that pink suit.
Maybe. Yeah, somebody put them together.
On a side note here, is tout still a thing?
There
No.
you go.
8 years later.
No,
Why do
absolutely not.
They want you to tout your responses to who is going to win the Fatal 4-Way.
That's almost as good as when they wanted you to mail in your cable bill for a friggin' magnet or a poster. No,
So,
thanks.
raise your hand if you know what tout is. Yeah, I didn't think so. So I
I've
looked
never
it up.
touted, ever.
I had to look it up because I was like, what the hell is tout? And the only reason why it took off was a year prior, Shaquille O'Neal announced his retirement on tout. So that's what made this social media platform, which is essentially like a 60-second Snapchat is what it is. You take a 60-second video and it posts online. That's all it was. And he announced his retirement basically going, peace. And the whole platform took off. So the WWE's like, oh, let's get on this bandwagon. And pretty much after this month, so like maybe April of 2014-ish, 2013-ish, excuse me, not 2014, it's how it pretty much started dying, and it officially went bankrupt in 2018. So, hey, don't worry, they were revolutionary on this one.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the things I noticed too. I thought it was funny when they were like, tout who you think's going to win the Fatal 4-Way. It's like, no, I'll just watch it.
They said hashtag. Did they mean Twitter?
I know.
Yeah. Well, and then at the very end, when Stephanie McMahon made a tweet, the King goes, "I'm going to tweet her right now." Michael Cole was like, he said twit.
That's what. It's funny about watching some of these old things, seeing either some of the advertising or commercials, like the 1-800-COLLECT commercials. And it's sad that some of our listeners are probably like, what the hell is 1-800-COLLECT? Like just some of these products that were major sponsors, they're like, what the hell is this? You have to look up like, oh, I remember that. It's when you didn't have money and you called someone on a payphone.
Dial down
You made
the
them pay
middle.
your bill.
Next up, we have Mark Henry versus Zack Ryder. This was just a total squash match.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, that's all it was.
His whole career in WWE. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt Cardona.
Yeah, I guess you're always ready for a reason.
Ready to take an ass whooping and bad booking.
They tried. They were just this was before his Hall of Pain run, and they were just trying to get Mark Henry to kind of build that mystique back up because he floundered for a while too. And right now they're talking about he wants an in-ring return and he's pushing 50, but he posted a picture recently. He still looks jacked. And Mark Henry, I think he's just one of those staples, all of the Big Show, where he's always going to be around because he's that big guy. So he doesn't bump as much as others, but when he throws someone around the ring, he looks like he's hurting them.
Well, not only that, the last time we saw him was when Randy Orton was yelling at him and he had that scooter.
Yeah.
E-scooter. So we probably should see him in at least a better light at some point.
It's true.
Next up, we have The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler, and we have our first interaction with a legend here. We have Ric Flair come out in support of The Miz. I kind of found that a little bit odd, considering where The Miz's character is now.
It was a weird pairing at the time.
Yeah.
Like, even look back at it now, it just felt like they were putting Ric Flair with The Miz to try to get him like old school fans to fall in love with The Miz.
Yeah.
It's like old school fans think The Miz is a real world reject who, like that's who The Miz is to me. I mean, I like the character but I mean, I know him from when he was on MTV first. And it's just, you could tell they were trying to find something for The Miz to do.
Yeah, it's a few years removed from his title run, his feud with Cena, and they didn't really have a lot for him to do. And like you said, a lot of fans didn't like him because he came from the real world. But I'm gonna give him a little bit more credit because he busted his ass in True Developmental, worked his way through, got bullied by JBL, which right there shows you that if JBL finally likes you, you must be doing something right. And he actually made it. I don't think he's a top guy. He's not a main event guy, but when he had the Intercontinental title, like those are his runs. Those are his niches when he's the Intercontinental champion, because that's where he's believable. That's where I think, okay, he's got that strap. He can run with it. Him as world champion, it's not really believable. So, like you said, they paired him with Flair to try to get people to care about him. And it's funny because the first show I was on with you guys, you talked about how the one thing you hated was when they paired Ric Flair with Miz, and then it comes up on the show. And I'm like, that's ironic. We've come full circle on the show now.
Well, and it just goes to show you that they do that all the time. Like think about, they recently just paired Flair with Lacey Evans. up until she was pregnant originally by Ric Flair for a week, jokingly, and then they were like, "Nah, we can't go through with this." So, but even Rick was surprised at that angle when they found out that she was pregnant. They wanted him to act that way, and even he was kind of taken back by it, from what I read. So, they every couple of years they try to find someone for Flair to hang out with, whether it's Randy Orton, whether it's Lacey Evans, whether it's The Miz, Triple H. I mean, there's always somebody Flair's tagging along with.
So far, though, besides the Four Horsemen, Evolution is really the only one that's ever worked for him.
Yeah. Next up is the promo between The Rock and John Cena for their match at WrestleMania 29. This is counterpoint. I thought The Rock was really good here. He was entertaining. He came out and made a joke how cold it was in Buffalo, and
he's got icicles forming on the people's nipples.
On the people's nipples.
And he didn't have to write any of it on his arm this time.
Nope. I actually thought this is a really good promo by Cena here too, just kind of saying how he failed at WrestleMania 28 and what it does to a man. I actually thought this is one of Cena's better promos.
And that's saying something, because Cena was always a good talker. Whether you like him or hate him in the ring, he's always had the ability to kind of convey whatever situation he was in to the fans and to the people at home in a really solid way. He's very witty and quick-witted, so that helps. But I totally agree. This match, this promo leading up to the match, I mean, again, it has the title, so they didn't really need that, but they weren't as into it as they were the year before, because they generally hated each other the year before. Like they had issues the year before, and at this point they'd kind of hashed it out a little bit. So it wasn't like the first year where they fought each other. Some of those promos were like, "Ooh, can't believe he said that." This year was a little bit toned down, but it was still a good back and forth.
Yeah, there's an article I read recently about Cena essentially reaching out to The Rock and apologizing him because he would, start getting his movie offers, movie roles too, and realize that, it wasn't so much The Rock abandoning the WWE audience as there was other opportunities, and he knew he was phasing out. And, as Cena last year at WrestleMania realized, hey, I have to do part-time now. I get it now. And yeah, like you said, this promo didn't have the same fire and visceral that it did, in 2012, excuse me. But there were some good one-liners, like obviously the icicle on the people nipples, but even the "you were responsible for my collapse, but through failure I became stronger." Like that was a great line by Cena, because if that's not an inspiring ass quote from wrestling, I don't know what is.
Well, like Tim said, it was real. Like Cena was like, he at this point, after losing to The Rock the year before, I bet you Cena felt horrible, but he probably felt just like how Punk felt dropping the belt to him.
I agree.
I also love the Lance Armstrong line by The Rock. I thought that was pretty funny.
About him being full of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, a great match here. We have Jack Swagger against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw's being accompanied by Sergeant Slaughter and Dusty Rhodes. It was kind of weird because they rang the bell here, and then just Swagger just hit everybody with the 2x4. And that was pretty much it.
And they were playing off on Swagger being the real American, and all these guys being American heroes. Does anybody remember WrestleMania when Slaughter turned and was a Iraqi sympathizer?
Yeah, I know.
Does anybody remember that? Because I do. I certainly remember that. So
Hogan remembers, brother.
Right. Hogan must post. But so like, yeah, I don't. It was just funny how like they're like, oh, the American dream, and then Hacksaw Jim Duggan's always waving the flag, and then the American war hero. It's like, no. I mean, I get what you're going for, but like it was funny how they like almost tried to erase that he had that gimmick where he like, turned heel.
I don't understand the point of this. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. Jack Swagger, it's not like he was anti-American. It's not like he was the un-Americans with Christian crapping on America. So you had these three old timers who represent America come out to teach the young man a lesson. No, this was America beating down America. Like, was this supposed to be like a Civil War angle? What was going on in that writing room? That's all I want to know.
The line of the match was Duggan looking at him going, "Put the board down." Right before he put it down on him.
Next up is the Primetime Players against Team Hell No. Storyline here is Primetime Players are trying to get the $1 Million Man to be their manager. He said he'll think about it. And well, it didn't work out for them.
Well, and it was a good spot too because Team Hell No also has their moments too where they were not on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a thing, you know, they were kind of in a little bit of a feud with the primetime players, but you also had that, well, will Kane and Daniel Bryan work together to win the match? So like what happens if the primetime players do win? Does that then put Ted DiBiase on their side? And that was one of the things they mentioned that, you know, even the King's like, well, if they win, he's going to go with them. And Michael Cole's like, well, he said he'd think about it. He wasn't going with them no matter what, but it was just funny that, like, I mean, it was a decent angle. And then I like the part at the end where Ted DiBiase puts a $100 bill down Darren Young's throat. And then Daniel Bryan, when no one's looking, goes back, puts it in his trunks and walks away.
Yeah, there was definitely good spots. I forgot about Darren Young, to be honest with you. I was like, didn't he have Bob Backlund with him? I thought he had Bob Backlund with him.
That was like 2 or 3. That was like 2 or 3 years later, and he did nothing in between. But yeah,
right. And I've always loved Team Hell No. I thought because, again, speaking of bad booking, the year later they had Daniel Bryan essentially drop his world title to Sheamus in like 10 seconds, and have this weird spiral run. But I feel like that's kind of what started the Yes movement. So I think Team Hell No is to try to keep him as a face, turn him as a face, because they became a fan favorite tag team. And thank you, Scorpio Sky, for having those good therapy sessions with him and straightening them out. Or sorry, Dr. Shelby.
It's funny that the Team Hell No and Kane and Daniel Bryan are memorable for their own things by themselves. But when anybody says Team Hell No, all you can think of is how funny some of their skits were.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was magic. So
it's how to do entertainment and wrestling right. You know, you can be over the top. I mean, Christ, AEW's got a dinosaur wrestling. I love Luchasaurus. You can be over the top as long as you have fun with it and realize, like, make fun of yourself, like they did. Like, oh, Jerry Lawler's like, oh, he corrected me. It's a goat tee. Like, you know, like having fun with some of the different things they do versus, you know, the early 90s where they tried to make you believe that the Goon was a real hockey player going to beat my ass. Like, no, it's some 40-year-old guy in a hockey jersey.
Yeah, this is a real plumber out here. TL Hopper, he's gonna kick your ass. No, he's not.
Rico Man.
Yeah, you mean one half of Demolition?
Yes.
Yeah. Earthquake turns into Shockmaster and a tugboat.
Tugboat and Earthquake were two different guys, buddy.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, he changed his persona
Typhoon,
like 10 times.
Typhoon
Oh, sorry.
was Tugboat. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
between
right.
WCW mixing them all together.
Bill Ottman, or Fred Ottman, rather. Sorry, Fred Ottman was Tugboat.
Tugboat, who's Cody Rhodes' godfather.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. Well, and that was a story that as soon as you said the Shockmaster thing, I was like, that ain't right, because I remember when he did the Shockmaster thing that Cody was watching, and he's like, that was Uncle Fred. His head fell off, and he put it back on.
So maybe Earthquake went the oddities then, right? Because he was Golga for a while, wasn't he? The one with the Hartman doll? Okay.
Yes.
See, that's why I get mixed up, because they changed personas so many times.
And he was the Shark.
The Shark.
In WCW also.
That's right. And they were the Natural Disasters, so I know they were together.
Earthquake,
so
Typhoon.
that's what I'm saying. I get it mixed up. So I apologize to the late Fred Ottman.
Hey, I just wanted to make sure that people knew. I called you on it. And, you know.
I know. I'll just watch it on Spotify.
Hey,
and
I hope that everybody heard. I hope everybody listened to the end of the episode, because Tim left that in where I literally was like, fucking putz. So I went back and listened to it just for that, because I thought it was hilarious. But anyways.
That's when you know we're having fun, though.
Yeah.
And Mongo, in case you didn't know, Mr. America was Hulk Hogan.
Well,
no.
Nope.
But he took a lie detector test.
I know he did.
Oh,
it's still real to me, damn it.
Next up is a symbol of how things have changed in 8 years. You have Brodus Clay and Sweet Tea Tensai with the Honky Tonk Man taking on 3MB. And they're going to get a quick win with a roll-up on Drew McIntyre here. Which is kind of ironic, because Drew McIntyre is still going stronger than ever, and the rest of these guys have kind of really faded out.
I was just going to say, Drew took the loss, and he's probably the one jobbing to this day, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 3MB, for what it wasn't a terrible gimmick. I mean, it gave them something to do, and the three of them enjoyed each other's company, so that was nice. But they were never going to amount to anything on TV, unfortunately, because they were just a comedy gimmick, and so wasn't Tensai and Brodus Clay. So it was two comedy gimmicks essentially fighting for the Honky Tonk Man. It was Honky Tonk Man on a pole.
I feel so bad for Matt Bloom. I mean, when he was Prince Albert and Albert before an A Train, he was a solid worker. And then he went to Japan and he just became a mega star and he killed it overseas. And then them repackage him as Tensai just killed any momentum he had coming back because it was such a terrible game. And he tried so hard to sell. And then he was, like Tim said, had to turn to sweet tea because they realized that this Tensai thing's not going to work. And even Brodus Clay was not a terrible worker, but they just didn't package them right and they became laughable. So you essentially had two comedy acts versus each other. And the Honky Tonk Man, who everyone who's listening to this show knows my feelings. I can't stand the dude.
And it's interesting that he didn't come out to his regular music either.
Yeah.
He didn't come out to the pink Cadillac, the long sideburns and my hair slicked back, coming to your town in a pink cat. He didn't come out to these. He came out to, it was weird. I don't know why they didn't use his regular entrance there. I don't know if it was licensing or I thought they owned that, but maybe they didn't. It's weird.
Next up, we are teased with the debut of Fandango.
Better say it right, Justin Roberts, or he will not wrestle.
And
feel it and let the A's breathe. Come on.
Man. Drink it in, man.
Preview of things to come, unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, he wasn't happy with how his name was pronounced, and we have to wait a little bit longer to see Fandango wrestle.
Totally worth the wait.
Said no one. No. Honestly, when he first debuted back in the day, I was like, isn't that where I buy my movie tickets? Like when I go out for a preview, like, because if you look at fandango.com, it's spelled the same way. So I've never called him Fandango or however he says it. Yeah, I've always called him Fandango. And I always called him the movie ticket just because that's all I remember that website for. And clearly, which lasts longer? So far, it's the app. Because right now he's with Tyler Breeze, I think, on NXT doing their their fashion police angle. I never really cared for it. I just feel like he's a decent worker, but his gimmicks are just terrible.
And not to shit on the guy the whole way. Kudos to him from, he was out for almost 2 years. And he had some injuries and stuff. And so kudos to him for coming back. He's from Maine, so he's from up around this way. So, I mean, it's kind of cool. But yeah, he's never amounted to much, honestly, unfortunately.
I was gonna say, it's just the gimmicks they get saddled with, unfortunately. And he does his best with it. Like, I mean, when he first debuted, this was a longer tease because I remember this was a shtick for a while. It was kind of like what they did with Lacey Evans a few years ago, where she'd come out and she'd walk out and she'd turn around and she'd go back. Mm-hmm. It was almost the same thing. He would come out and find an excuse, and then they did with that all red everything girl. She would come out and find an excuse not to. It's such a tired trope, though. I just wish they would stop doing it.
You're looking for Eva Marie.
Yeah, all red everything.
Well, and they did it with Emelina too, except they did her with vignettes. And then when they finally had her come out, she was like, Emelina's going back to Emma. But anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say, now Tennille Dash was tearing it up in the Indies and Impact, so joke's on them.
Yeah. Well, and they started doing the same kind of vignettes with Carmella too, so I'm glad they didn't have her like, Carmella's going back to being Mella is money.
And look where she is now. Oh wait, I haven't seen her since the pay-per-view.
Yeah, she's on SmackDown here and there talking to Reggie, but that's about it.
Reggie's got more screen time than she does.
He's more entertaining. Sorry, Corey Graves.
Next up is a champion versus champion match. You have Alberto Del Rio, who's the world champion, against Wade Barrett, the Intercontinental champion. And Alberto Del Rio is going to win with the arm breaker here. And it's nice to see that Wade Barrett's back with the company now and with the NXT. And we all Alberto Del Rio's got some issues.
He might still be in jail.
Yeah,
best place for him.
But yeah, no, Wade Barrett is another guy. It's kind of like Cesaro that they dropped the ball with. I mean, he could have been at least at the Miz's level. Like Mongo was talking about the Miz being right below that upper tier. Wade Barrett's a believable guy there too, and it's too bad that Stu Bennett, Wade Barrett, whatever you want to call him, had the WWE shitty booking for a while. And actually the Bad News Barrett gimmick was kind of getting over with the fans. So I don't know why. I mean, I don't know if he wanted to get away from it or if WWE went away. Same reason why the WWE went away from Rusev Day. Why? Because it was getting over.
Yeah, if Vince doesn't create it or Vince doesn't understand it, it doesn't get over. You know, I hate when people say, "Oh, it's all these bitter fans saying this." I'm like, it's not just bitter fans. It's the truth. If Vince doesn't understand it, that's why all these ex wrestlers you hear on every single podcast, they're like, "Oh yeah, he didn't understand my gimmick," or the gimmick started to work and then he changed it, so I lost all steam. And Wade Barrett's one. I'm like, why? Look, even looking back, like, why did Alberto Del Rio go over? That makes no sense.
I mean, he was the world champion at the time, and he was, feuding with Jack Swagger going to WrestleMania. So at that time, it made sense. But like, how do you not push a guy like Barrett? He's got size. He's got a pretty good look. He was really good in the ring. I mean, I wouldn't say he was great, but he was, close. He was a good performer.
Yeah. Next up is the return of the New Age Outlaws.
Oh, you didn't know?
They're going to get a win over Primo and Epico here after the Fame-Master by Billy Gunn. This was just, I think, a crowd pleaser to see the New Age Outlaws come back. They did the typical, their stick before the match and everything. So this is pretty entertaining. And like I said, I think it was meant to please the crowd.
This kind of kickstarted their 2-year run too, though, because
Yeah.
the following year they wrestled regularly. They wrestled the next week. Was it the next week on Raw or on SmackDown? One or the other. They wrestled the Road Scholars at one point, and then later on in the year they actually won the tag titles from Cody Rhodes and Goldust. So
Yeah, they definitely keep
one more run at them.
But it was good. It was a good nostalgia. I can remember how many times going into school with Roland, and we're always doing the ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children. That was fun. I don't care. I'm 34 years old, and I still do that. I did it last night finishing watching this. I did it along with them. It's just like you do the Undertaker rollback. There's certain quotes you say. I always say it. And that to me, I don't care if the match sucked because it really wasn't that great of a match. Just having them do that shtick, it always makes me pop because it's one of my favorite things they do.
Next up is a celebration of Mae Young's 90th birthday. We have Mean Gene come out with all the wrestlers and everything. But who interrupts it? It's CM Punk. He comes out to start the Fatal 4, which I thought was great. I thought it was a great spot for his character and everything. I think it made perfect sense. He interrupts it, and we start the Fatal 4-Way between him, Randy Orton, Sheamus, and The Big Show. And we all know what's going to happen. CM Punk's going to win with the GTS. I believe it was on Orton, if I'm not mistaken.
It was either Orton or Sheamus. It wasn't the Big Show, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think you're right. I can't remember.
And he gets,
We also glossed over the Triple H segment too, where he came out
oh, that's right.
and addressed the Brock Lesnar attack. I'll tell you what, the week before that, Lesnar, talk about having a gusher. He got busted open the hard way. He got 12. I mean, Triple H said 12. Michael Cole said 18. Either way, he got a shitload of staples in his head. It was one of those replays where they had to literally put it black and white because there was so much blood. And this was, coming off the heels of Lesnar F5ing Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon needing to get a hip done, which was obviously something he needed to get done before that. It wasn't like he had to have it done. They wrote him off that way. This was good storytelling. Not to crap on the main event, but that to me, you could have went home with this segment of Triple H because Triple H at that time was still somewhat, I mean, he was part-time, but at least he went into personal stuff, which usually doesn't happen with Vince, acknowledging Vince's, the grandfather of my kids, the father of my wife, so there was, and he found his reason to come back. He said he was training, he had nothing to go for, and then he found his reason. He goes, in my head, I was smiling because I had my reason to come back. It was a killer promo from Triple H.
And I think it goes to tell you behind the scenes probably how he thought, because from 2013 to 2019, he had those great sporadic WrestleManias, but he always had good storylines or good incentives to go. You wanted him to be in WrestleMania. So that's why 2020 was weird not having him. But like you said, yeah, he made it personal with Brock. It made it personal. And, also sidebar, can I just say that he has the greatest entrance music pretty much in all of wrestling. Hearing Motorhead, time to play the game. It's one of the best entrance songs in wrestling. Fight me. I don't care.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of wraps it up for this Raw episode, which I thought was a pretty important episode in terms of the road to WrestleMania. It kind of set a lot of things up. We had some matches who the Undertaker's going to face. We had the Cena Punk promo. So I thought it was a pretty important show. Definitely would recommend the promos by Triple H and the Rock Cena promo. The matches itself, they're your typical Raw matches. But I was, for an old school Raw, I thought it was, a pretty decent show. It is a little chore to get through it. It is a little long, like we said in the beginning. But overall, I kind of like, diving into this one.
Oh, it was nice to go back and do it. I mean, last week we did NXT for the first time. So this week we're doing a Raw for the first time. And yeah, being a 3-hour show that, after they cut the commercials out, is a little over 2 hours. It was only hard to get through because certain parts dragged on, whichever way you want to say it. But other than that, it was entertaining. Probably the best match was The Miz and Dolph Ziggler. I think, even though there was some shenanigans, I think the best wrestling came out of that match.
No, I agree. It didn't feel as old school besides the theme as I want it to be with some of the segments, but overall it was a solid match of wrestling, and the segments, like you said, had some kind of parts that stretched out a little too much, but overall it was a good show. I'd give it a good 6 or 7. It was a decent show. It was one of the better Raws because it's WrestleMania season. That's usually when the best content is anyway.
Coming up for you guys next week, we're going to go back to WCW with Uncensored 99. And we'll also recap AEW Revolution for you guys. We'll be back next Saturday at 5. Until then, I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present.
I hope you're all having a nice day.